If you're someone who thinks that I need to be quiet about what I'm about to talk about, it's probably time for you to move on from my community. Recently, I put out a video about Palestine where we discussed Zionism as a settler colonial project. What do I mean when I say settler colonial? I mean a system that moves a new population into somebody else's homeland, seizes land and resources among the people who are already there, and replaces their political power, their language, and their culture with institutions that privilege the newcomers. The United States is an example of a settler colonial nation as well. In plain terms, basically, that means land theft, removal of the people, and rule by the newcomers. That rule we're talking of is enforced by courts, checkpoints, and guns. We also explained why the situation in Palestine is not merely a both sides or two sides conflict, because one side has an overbearing, overwhelming military with jets, with tanks, with bombs, and the other side are an occupied people made up of civilians. As we discuss these things, it's very important that we understand what international law has to say about these things. People under foreign domination have a right to self-determination and a recognized right to resist by any means necessary. And that principle is the baseline for how I'm about to speak. In an earlier video that I made about the Israeli occupation of Palestine, I spoke about October 7th, and I said Hamas executed a brutal attack, and I added that I don't condone it, but I understand it. And I want to be really clear today, that was imprecise, that was not the right way to say that. And I must correct the record on this. I softened the way I said this because I was worried that people would fixate on the violence instead of the underlying structure that is responsible for violence like this. Under foreign domination and apartheid, resistance, including armed resistance, has legal and moral grounding. Naming that is not harm to civilians. It's refusing to lie about cause and effect. And what I should have said is this. On October 7th, a colonized people rebelled against an occupying force that has been unimaginably abusing and oppressing these people for decades. And to be very clear, I do not condemn that action. I absolutely affirm and do condone a people's right to fight for their own independence. And context matters here because October 7th wasn't a bolt from the blue. It's well known that the occupying forces in Israel had detailed warnings of October 7th, including a written battle plan and frontline spotters on the Gaza fence. And these alarms were raised for weeks but dismissed by Israel. On the day of October 7th itself, commanders used a lesser-known army order called the Hannibal Directive. In plain English, what that means is if Israelis are taken hostage, you stop the capture at any cost, even if that means killing other Israeli civilians. And that's not a theory, that is part of the record. Israel killed many of its own civilians on that day. And history and behavior science tell us that when a people are brutalized, displaced, and stripped of their freedom and their homes, resistance is not only predictable, it is their right to resist. I know none of us watching this want to see innocent life lost, and Israel has itself to blame for October 7th. It is the direct result of decades of occupation, apartheid, and systemic violence against Palestinians. We must not fall for the propaganda that frames October 7th as a terrorist attack. It was an act of a colonized people fighting for their freedom and their independence. I support Indigenous self-determination and the right to resist foreign domination and apartheid. And I stand with the Palestinian people in their struggle for freedom. Inevitably, I always get the questions, why do I even speak out on these issues? So I do this to help others find their voice too, to amplify voices of people who may not have a platform as large as mine, and for people who have a larger platform than me, to see me go first. Maybe that might inspire them to speak out about these things. So collectively, we can all do our small, tiny part to make the world a better place. And I have to tell you, when someone tells me I shouldn't discuss politics on my page, what I'm actually hearing is a demand to defend the current status quo. You know, I think we really have a problem in the Western world with what's become known as a right to comfort. Where speaking out against the genocide happening in Palestine is considered more offensive than the actual genocide itself. And so by right to comfort, I mean the learned expectation that our feelings of discomfort must be spared at all times. It's the demand for civility and no politics here that tone polices the truth while leaving violence untouched. I'm not here to protect anyone's comfort. I'm here to protect lives. But I have to say, if you're one of those who is feeling uncomfortable, understand that's part of the point. Discomfort is that crack in the logic that we have all been taught to accept. And sitting with it, understanding it, and deconstructing it is the first step to dismantling it. So I'm once again asking for my fellow people in the animal care sector to amplify the voices of those in Palestine, to immediately call for a ceasefire and the needless bombing of civilians, to allow international aid for a people who are being intentionally starved as a weapon of war as we speak. And we can't all be free until Palestine is free.